Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen Jones here with Rockin' the Valley Presents. We have a treat tonight, and a treat, personal treat, basically for myself. Gershwin, George Gershwin's hit Rhapsody in Blue. And I got to tell you, I've been listening to Rhapsody in Blue since as long as I can remember. And these two guys here are bringing it to life with a youth orchestra. Is that correct?
Right? That's right.
That is correct.
So let's do some introductions here. And you can tell us, the organization you're with, and we'll just kind of get into this because I know we got a lot of things to cover, and I'm excited. I really am, just looking at the basis on it. So we've got Paul here. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you're with.
You bet. Paul Piment's here with Classical Kids Music Education. I'm the artistic and executive director. I'm also the producer and creator of Gershwin's Magic Key. And Classical Kids, typically what we do is we're out on the road performing live theatrical symphony concerts around the world with major orchestras, and we introduce children and their parents to the great classical composers. We also create recordings of these productions, and our latest here is Gershwin's Magic Key.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, Gershwin's Magic Key. Oh, I love it. Okay, and down at the bottom we have Will Martin. Will, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Will Martin. I'm the head writer, music supervisor, and featured pianist on Gershwin's Magic Key. Met Paul about 8 years ago. We've actually been working on this project for that long, if you can believe it or not. I mean, there's a lot that goes into putting something like this together. First, it was a stage show, and getting that mounted took years, and then turning it into a studio recording took years. So here we are.
Well, welcome to Rockin' the Valley, and just a little background for your people who you've invited to watch the broadcast. Rockin' the Valley was originally a 1-hour radio program about 8 years ago, maybe 9. I'm not really sure anymore. But we started out here in the Lehigh Valley, which is the Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area of Pennsylvania. It's eastern end of it. And we basically support live music. With technology came video, and we started putting out video. And then with COVID came Zoom. We started doing that stuff. Now, the interesting thing, and what drew me to you guys, is that when we got into the video and I got into my own website and we expanded everything, we put on more than one show a week. Right now, we're somewhere around 8 shows a week. Oh. And and as you know about producing one show, try producing 8. Okay, yeah. It's a real juggling act. But at any rate, one of our shows is called Rock Youth. And we took some kids that, 14, 15 years old, coming out of School of Rock or the Lesson Center or art school or whatever, and got them on the stage. And these kids had never had a chance to get on a stage yet. They're all green, and they get up there and they start playing. And the one kid I remember fell off the chair. I had another kid stand there. It's a 12-year-old kid, and I said to her, I said, "You write your own stuff?" She goes, "Well, yes, I do." And I said, "Where do you get the inspiration? Where can a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old kid get an inspiration to write stuff?" "Well, there's so much drama in our school. It's just I got all this stuff." So what I did, poor child, when she said there's so much drama, I was standing off stage, and I jumped into the stage and I went, "You're kidding!" The kid almost dropped the guitar and jumped right off.
I'll bet.
So, and it's the crazy stuff like that has made Rockin' the Valley, a staple. I mean, we've graduated to the Wake Up, Rise Up World Peace Concert, Live for Peace. Yeah. We were just involved with that back on the 21st, and that was around the whole globe.
Yeah.
And I stayed up 38 hours. And I was grouchy. So that was rough. But we've done a lot of different things and gotten involved with some things. Some stuff is still big for us. But I've had the pleasure of meeting Chubby Checker. I've had the pleasure of working with Bill Haley Jr. Okay. In a couple of days, I'm going to be interviewing Tommy James. Okay, and I've got you fine people, and I've met a lot of good people, and it's just we've got such a momentum behind us, and it's just like so. But anyway, two things actually got me on you guys. It was Gershwin, who is my all-time favorite composer, next to John Williams, who I would say if somebody were to look at the history books, they would see Tchaikovsky, Mozart, and Bach back in the 1800s, and they're going to see Gershwin and Williams in the 1900s. That's my, I'm not too sure if they'll see anyway. Well, Gershwin, Williams, and oh, this is bad. He wrote the Star Trek theme too, and I should know it.
I don't know it either.
Oh my god.
But if you like Williams, you should check out Korngold, Eric Korngold.
Oh yeah.
Williams learned a lot of his techniques and actually even stole some of his melodies.
Oh my god.
Like the Star Wars theme comes from King's Row, written by Korngold. Yeah, do you know the 1938 Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn?
Yeah.
That's Korngold.
I'll be done.
So one of the first big movie composers, and Williams really popularized his style, which is really cool.
Well, I was surprised to find out that Williams, oh my God, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Goldsmith, Jerry Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith, yeah, he's very good too.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, Alexander Courage, and John Williams used to collaborate, how you say it? And they would stay together writing different pieces. Williams wrote the opening theme to Lost in Space. Okay. Yeah, the original from back in the 1960s. He did the opening.
I remember.
No kidding.
He's credited as Johnny Williams. Right. And Alexander Courage did Star Trek, back the original series, and Goldsmith did the movie and then Next Generation. But in there, they all wrote different pieces for each person. They worked, as a unit.
That's really cool. I never knew that.
Yeah, and I was surprised. Alexander Courage, hated science fiction. He absolutely hated it. He didn't. There was actually a story where Roddenberry, the owner of Star Trek, walked up and put words to the Star Trek opening theme that he wrote, just so he could get his hands a part of the copyright on it. And Courage was not happy. So, at least that's what the popular take is. I don't know if it's true. I wasn't there, but yeah, they used to work together from what I've read, and maybe someone out to say, "Now, Steve, you're all wrong. You got it wrong." Okay, that's fine. I'll look it up on social media and get the right thing later on. So, but you guys are working with Rhapsody in Blue, a story about it, and George Gershwin, which I think is cool, and I love the music. And how was it first conceived? I'm just going to ask a question because I know a little trivia on it, not much. So I'm going to challenge you with what little I know. Then you're going to tell me how I'm wrong, and then we're going to move forward. So, how was
Rhapsody in Blue?
Was first conceived? Rhapsody in Blue. How did he first envision
Rhapsody in Blue? Well, George was playing pool with his brother Ira, and Ira was a voracious reader. So even when they were playing pool, Ira was reading the newspaper. And he came across a little article, just about that big, that said George Gershwin is going to be writing a jazz concerto for Paul Whiteman's Experiment in Modern Music.
Wow.
And Ira said, "Hey, George, did you know that you're doing this?" And George said, "No, when is it due?" And Ira said, "It's due in a month." And so George was already scheduled. I mean, he had spoken with Paul Whiteman about the possibility of writing a jazz concerto. Paul and George had worked together in the 1924 George White Scandals, and that's where they did Stairway to Paradise, and they got really great reviews from people, sort of, elevating jazz. And so this was very much at the forefront of their minds. They talked about it all the time, and George had tossed around this idea of trying to marry jazz sounds with classical form. And Paul had taken him at his word, and so had scheduled this thing without George's knowledge. So now George is in a real predicament because he's got to get up to Boston for previews of his new musical, Sweet Little Devil. And so he's got to write this Rhapsody in Blue now. He didn't have the title yet. The title comes last. But he had to write this Rhapsody in Blue on the train on the way to rehearsals and then back to New York. And so he wrote it in his head, if you can believe it, without any manuscript paper. And he had it all worked out, all of the themes, all of the ideas. And the rattledy-bang of the train inspired a lot of it. So he gets to New York City. He's got just a few days before the concert. He's writing super quickly so that he's passing the manuscript paper with the ink dripping to his orchestrator, who's sitting in the room being fed Russian tea from his mother. And the orchestrator, by the way, was Ferdy Gruffet, who worked with the Paul Whiteman Band exclusively, because the Whiteman Band was made up of extremely idiosyncratic and talented musicians who had the ability to play 3-4 instruments each. So they would get up and trade instruments in the middle of a performance. So even old hand composers, much more experienced than the 24-year-old Gershwin, relied on this orchestrator to orchestrate their work specifically for the Whiteman Band. A lot of people misunderstand and think that Gershwin wasn't talented enough to orchestrate his own works. That's not true. The reason Gershwin needed Ferdy Gruffet's help was that Gruffet was attuned to the specific talents of the Whiteman Band, and they had like 3 days to do it.
Wow.
So they finally get to the premiere, and there's still like pages blank with Gershwin writing "Wait for Nod." He's just gonna, play a cadenza by himself, and Paul Whiteman doesn't know exactly when to come in. So it was the spur of the moment thing, and all sorts of people were in this audience: highbrow, lowbrow, opera singers, Tin Pan Alleyites, vaudevillians. Sergei Rachmaninoff was there. And nobody knew. Whiteman was at once excited and sure that it was going to be a success, and then at the next moment terrified that it was going to ruin his career. And Gershwin walks out on stage and plays Rhapsody in Blue in the concert. If there were one concert from all of history that I could attend, go back in time and attend, it would be this one. And he blew them away.
Wow.
Rest is history.
And by the way, all of that's on the recording. All of that scene
in
work,
like 30 seconds.
And we're going to explore some of this.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to stow the idea of my trivia because I think you just blew me away. I'm going to challenge you on Star Trek trivia later on. That I can
Deal.
Okay. What's the title of the show? But this right here, okay, I'll make my trivia question. Is it true the Paul Whiteman Band was actually like a small band? It was like only 10 or 15 members or something like that. It wasn't a full orchestra.
Right.
And
Yeah.
A banjo?
Yeah, they had banjo. They actually had a second piano in the original orchestration. Gershwin often wrote for second piano, which is kind of strange because in the big symphony versions of these works, the second piano is cut. I actually have copies of the original manuscripts, like the sheet music that the parts from the Whiteman Band, and they've got like jokes written in with like "take cigarette break here." It's wonderful. It's so real.
Then here's the question, which I was going to make trivia, which I don't even know is true at this point. Was the piano part put on rolls for a player piano?
Yes, they recorded just about a month after the original premiere, February 24th, 1924. Excuse me, February 9th, 1924. They did a recording. It was a 9.5-minute recording because of the limitations of the technology at the time. So they had to take a lot of cuts. And unfortunately, as you know, the piece has been much maligned for its incoherence. And a lot of that is due to these cuts that were taken in the recordings and the cuts that the editors made without Gershwin's, with Gershwin's blessing, because he was a hungry young composer and just wanted it to be published. But
well, I'll tell you, looking at, like I said, I've been listening to this since I've been a kid. I remember putting it on one of my first stereos, and I've listened to it in the dark with fans blowing on me because I want to have that experience. I had mentioned before we came on, I was going to share a little bit of this with you. The part where it just stops and it goes da 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 da, that real quiet, it just builds. Okay, I'm telling you, when you're just sitting there like this and you absorb this music, okay, it's an experience. And at the end, when it's just, it gets so big and it's just, I will tell you honestly, I got chills talking about it. I love this piece, and it is seconded only, and I'm not even sure it's seconded, but it sits with some of the stuff that I've listened with Williams, and with Goldsmith, Goldstein. What was his name? Goldsmith, Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah, Goldsmith. You know, that they come out with in Star Trek. I just love this figure. So let's go on with a little bit of things here. Let's move forward now, Paul.
You might be interested in playing that clip of the Rhapsody, since we've just were talking about it, and a lot of the things Will was just describing are spoken in the dialogue over Rhapsody. The Rhapsody clip we do, of course, we don't do the entire Rhapsody in Blue, but that it's cut down. But it might be a fun thing to listen to now, since we were just hitting on all those points.
That's the one, Rhapsody closing AV bite.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go cut to this one here. We'll listen to this and see what it sounds like here. I'm just, for our audience, I'm going to tell you right away, I'm listening to this for the first time, so I'm anxious to hear this. So here's Rhapsody in Blue from this, the proper name of the orchestra again is Youth Orchestra?
Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra.
Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. Okay, here we go.
The rehearsals came and went. We returned to New York. The big day of his Rhapsody premiere was coming closer and closer, and I could tell Mr. G was starting to feel the pressure, because I didn't see him for days.
I was writing furiously. No time for imagination trips with the kid. I sat at my piano and wrote. As soon as a page was done, I'd pass it to the arranger, still dripping with ink. Everything was coming together without a moment to spare.
And finally, the day of the concert arrived. Time to go. I ran over to Aeolian Hall after putting in a morning's work at Remick's music store. What, I didn't tell you? Yep. I was learning how to be a song plugger, thanks to my magic key.
Glad your dad came around. February 12th, 1924. It was freezing cold outside and snowing. I thought people wouldn't show up in this weather, but they were fighting to get in the door.
Holy moly! They were pulling and mauling each other like at a baseball game or a prize fight. People couldn't wait to hear the concert.
I peeked out from the side of the stage to take a look at the crowd. Wow, it was a strange audience. Highbrow and lowbrow together, practically sitting in each other's laps. Vaudevillians, concert managers, come to have a look at the novelty.
Tin Pan Alleyites, composers, symphony and opera stars, flappers, cake eaters, all mixed up higgledy-piggledy.
It's time for my entrance.
The lights dimmed, the orchestra tuned, and there he was. Good old Mr. G. Everybody cheered as he walked out and sat down at the piano. Now it was time for... Wait, Mr. G, I don't know the title.
I told you, kid, the title comes last.
The time's running out. It's now or never. Well, what do you call it?
Why, of course. A Rhapsody in Blue!
I'm gonna my reaction. Yeah, I am blown away. I I I am completely. I mean, I don't care where you're playing next. I want to know. I will start. And I first off, I happen to love. Yeah, okay, that's it. I've been caught without words only a few times. They say I can talk underwater. I actually tried it and I accomplished it. And that's your entire youth orchestra.
That's a youth orchestra, yeah. You know, the formula that we use here is marrying words to music, and they play off of each other so beautifully because the emotion of the music times to the emotion of the dialogue, and it takes them both to a new art form, almost a new level where, and especially for young kids in the audience, they're just transported, you know, and you hear, you heard that there's a kid character. The kid character is actually named Kid, and George Gershwin meets Kid. The kid character is the point of entry into the story for the children in the audience. So they see themselves in this story, and then they learn from the composer. They learn about George's life. I think it's just a magical combination when you can marry the spoken word to the music, and it elevates it to a whole new place that's just captivating.
Well, I gotta tell you, the job you have done in 8 years, the work shows in that single clip, and the music is precise. I mean, it is absolutely on the mark, and you know, it just it grabbed me. It did. That's why I just didn't. You know, I just.
Thank you, sir.
So let's take it back to the beginning here. Some of the clips we talked about. Yeah. We were talking about this one here of a little bit of the behind the scenes. You want to talk about this clip before we go into it?
We have a great clip, I think, that shows off the top of the show, kind of sets up the entire story, and just to give a little background on how all of this marries together. You know, my background is in theater, so I've spent a lot of time on stage and directing. So I needed somebody that knew everything about George Gershwin, and Will was my guy. He also is a fantastic pianist, and he and stepped up to be the music supervisor on this production, which it became obvious that he was well qualified for. And we got the Gershwin library sent to us of stacks of scores sent on a pallet, dropped off in front of the office, and started pouring through all those scores and finding the excerpts that would match the scenes. So we started writing a story. I basically we have another writer on this who kind of helps to write the perspective from the kids' point of view. She is a young adult fiction writer, so she was hired to kind of voice the kid. Will voices George. And when we came up, I said, I want to explore the city of New York and all the music that is found there, and not just literal music, but the kind of music that you hear when you go to the top of the Empire State Building in the wind, or the kind of music you hear at Yankee Stadium in the crowd. And we started finding George's music that would reflect those things. Second Rhapsody, for instance, was paired with our scene when we go to the top of the Empire State Building. So this is how we'd write an overall scene. Will would present the scene, and we'd then listen to the music, and we'd kind of figure out where the music needed to be cut in order to match the scene. And then we would figure out where the words needed to be cut to match the music. And it was just a little bit of marrying back and forth until it was seamless. And we're reading the dialogue against the music, and we're like, we're going to have to cut this phrase out of the music, or we're going to have to cut this dialogue to match the phrase. But emotionally, the music and the dialogue, the most important thing was that it paired with each other, and that emotional ride in that scene was reflected in the music and could take the words to new heights with that music support. So when we open the show, we're opening it and you're going to hear the character Kid. We just named it Kid, named the character Kid. It's a poor newspaper boy selling newspapers on the streets in Tin Pan Alley, but I won't give too much away because the opening clip that you're going to play basically says all of this.
Well, let's go and do that right here. So it's the AV bike opening story. Here we go for this one, and I'm anxious. Here we go.
Great American composer George Gershwin, and how he helped me discover George Gershwin, and how he helped me discover. It's also the story of how he came to write his most famous piece of music. Our play begins in the New York of the Roaring 1920s. A time when Americans were optimistic about the future. This was the time of the first skyscrapers, the automobile, of jazz and dancing and flappers, of movie stars and gangsters. People of every creed and color were hopeful that, like buildings rising to scrape the sky, people were rising up as one nation, indivisible with liberty, justice, and a swell opening clarinet solo for all. And a swell opening clarinet solo for all. Selling newspapers on the corner of West 28th and Broadway. Tin Pan Alley it was called because of the noise. You see, more than 20 music stores stood in a row all in this one street with piano players banging away, each trying to be heard over all the rest. You can't imagine the noise, like 1,000 tin pans clanging together. Some people called it racket, but all those sounds made my heart pound. All those sounds made my heart pound.
Wow.
So that sets up the story. And that kid that played that clarinet solo, we've worked with professional orchestras all over the world. That's probably the best solo that has ever been, that we encountered in all of those performances we did. And that's a 16-year-old kid.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I realize that, but I just realized why all the kids took clarinet, flute, and timpani in high school band. It was to play that song. I mean,
yeah, right.
Heck yeah, brother.
So, and you have a 16-minute piece of Rhapsody in Blue.
Yeah.
How long is your actual production?
The production is 50 minutes long. It needs to be that length on stage. The different requirements of a family concert, time limit, keeping the attention of the children, getting in and out. Sometimes we'll do back-to-back performances. Sometimes we might be with the Kansas City Symphony and they'll bus in students for student shows and they have to turn that 1,500 seat house over very quickly. So it has to be a 50-minute show. We had to meet that time requirement. That's why all of our excerpts, we get through like all of the greatest hits. I think we have about 26 excerpts on this recording, but they're all pared down to be about 2 minutes each, and those weave through the scenes. So 2 minutes each times 26, you're about at that 50-minute period.
Okay, yeah, that works. This is just amazing.
And when you say greatest hits, I really made a concerted effort to try to get Gershwin's concerted works well represented. So a lot from Porgy and Bess. Whenever we could, we used Gershwin's own arrangements. Whenever we couldn't, we would use Robert Russell Bennett's. We tried to go for authenticity.
Yeah.
And we really tried to, like a lot of people, even professional conductors and orchestras, have never played, sometimes even heard the second Rhapsody, which we will be hearing tonight, and it is phenomenal.
I'm looking forward to hearing that. Now, let me ask you. Now, the way that clarinet was there, he came up and he didn't actually like. Now, I've heard the clarinet already. It'll come up and it doesn't do that. He does something else in there. It's like it sounds like he comes up and then he kind of hits a plateau. Then he comes back up on it again. It's something. It's different. And I noticed that. Right. What's going on there? Is that the actual way that Gershwin wrote it?
Well, before the show, before the recording, I was there with him on stage, and I asked him if he had ever heard the Whiteman Band play Rhapsody in Blue, and he said no. So I played it for him, and that opening clarinet solo, originally performed by Ross Gorman, made this kid laugh out loud. He thought it was so neat. He'd never heard a clarinet played like that before. So he did his best to kind of bring that into his performance, and that may have sort of created some sort of inspiration. Yeah.
Neat.
He was so sweet when he was recording it too, because he took his first pass at it and it was great. And we're like, wow, well, how'd you feel about that? And he's like, can I do it again? And I'm like, absolutely, you can do it again. So he plays it again, even better. And I'm like, that's excellent. I'm good with that. Are you good with that? And he's like, can I just do it one more time? And then he did it. And he's so shy and so sweet and just delivering this amazing solo. So the whole,
but also so thoroughly professional, you know?
The whole recording experience with them was fantastic because these kids were so excited about the work that they were accomplishing and so proud of themselves. And that was a full day of recording for them too, very challenging. And at the end, they were just on cloud nine, and so were we. They were just so excited about the work that they had accomplished.
Well, I'll tell you what, from what little I've heard so far, I am, like I said earlier, I'm blown away by it. So let's keep going.
Yeah.
What's the next clip you want me to go on here? You had we talked about the studio recording set to live show video. Is that the one you want me to do? FYC?
Yeah, we can show that FYC clip. It's kind of a little promotional clip. We are submitted, in an entry for the Grammys coming up, and we're hoping for a nomination. So let's roll that.
Yeah, before I roll, I'll say this: like, we have our own awards here, and when I first got into doing what I'm doing here, I was so excited when we made a nomination, and I'm thinking right away, "Oh, we're gonna win!" And one of our veterans came up to me, good friend, Tommy Zito, and I've had the opportunity to work in keyboards with him. Okay, he plays keys, I play keys, and we did dueling keyboards, and I play a little bit like Jerry Lee, and we did a lot of shaking going on together. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, so he comes up to me, and he's a 50-year veteran with music. And I said, "I can't wait. We're gonna win. We're gonna," he goes, "No." So what do you mean, no? I am winning everything. I'm going home with the golden duck, and nope. He says, "You made the nomination. That was the win."
Yeah.
That's the win. He said, because it takes a lot of work to get to the nomination. He says, you're amongst these people here. Okay.
Yeah.
All of you are winners. It's just that one of you got a little bit more than someone else, but you are all good. He says, don't you dare let your ego get in the way. And from that day forward, I was done. I just let things go. And we didn't win anything, by the way. So, and the following year we won. And the year after
the nomination is huge.
Yeah.
The nomination is just huge.
So, yeah, exactly. And, we've been nominated. We've had nominations, and I don't know. Sometimes each year it's like 28 nominations because we're a large organization of volunteers. I think at one point in time I had as many as 30 volunteers working with me, and so you're gonna, you're open to a lot of nominations. It's gonna happen, but anyway, so I hope you get the nomination. I really do, and even better if you get the the award itself. But you guys are fabulous. You got my vote, man. I'm telling you.
I appreciate that. And when Paul and I were writing this thing, there were a lot of 12, 14-hour days. This was I hope it's obvious this was a labor of love. And
Absolutely.
And we told ourselves, if there's just one kid that's inspired by this show, it makes all of this agony worth it. And you know what? We did our first show, and one of our family members was in the audience. And this family member told us after the show that she had heard a 5 or 6-year-old kid say to his mother, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be a composer."
Well, it was actually me crowd surfing back up through
it was you.
I was in the back of the house. I call the show as a director, meaning I'm on headset calling. And as everybody's exiting up the aisle, I'm heading down. And by the way, we premiered this at the Kennedy Center with the National Symphony. And so it was a very exciting time, but I was nervous. Is it going to be received well? Is it going to work? And I'm heading down the aisle and swimming upstream, so to speak. And that's when I heard this kid say, "Daddy, I want to become a composer."
Wow.
And that's what the kid character in this show is learning from George. George recognizes talent in this kid and is helping him recognize it himself. And that's where he's finding his magic key.
Well, let's take a look at the opening here. And when we come back, I got a little youth story for you. But here we go. This is the promo for the Grammys, I guess you would say.
Correct.
Take a look at the beach.
Jiminy, look at all those people packed like sardines. And the boardwalk, too.
They don't look bored to me. Look over there.
Oh, whoa.
Good thing you're not scared of heights. It's the latest and greatest roller coaster. Out with the old and in with the new.
It was huge. I'd read about it in the papers. Luna's Mile Sky Chaser dropped 80 feet and surrounded 3 sides of the park.
So you think you can handle the Chaser?
Don't you know me by now? If I can handle the top of the Empire State Building, shoot, I can handle her.
Ready?
Set?
Wow.
So a little roller coaster ride.
I guess. That's is that the Coney Island roller coaster? Is that the one on Coney Island?
Yeah, Coney Island, yeah.
You know what frightens me? The fact that I know what roller coaster is on a black and white film from the 1920s.
You're old school, man.
Oh no, it's now you finally find out you're old, but that's all right. It's wait a minute, it just occurred to me. What year was Rhapsody in Blue written?
Sorry, what's that?
What year was it written? 1924.
1924.
It's 97 years old.
Yeah, and it's just as fresh today as it was the day it was born.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, and the song is about New York, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, Second Rhapsody is explicitly about New York. I would say that Rhapsody in Blue is about New York in the same sense that George Gershwin is about New York.
Okay. Well, let's go to another clip here. Keep us moving.
We could, next up might be Cuban Overture. This is a point in the production and the recording where the kid character is starting to discover his key, and George helps him hear. How would you describe it? We'll hear all the sounds of the orchestra he's comparing all the birds in the trees and the
Right. So one of the things that we really wanted to do with this recording was not have the actors talking over the orchestra.
Right.
We wanted the words to draw the attention of the children's ears to what is going on in the orchestra. And, to the uninitiated, listening to symphonic music can be a little overwhelming. It just sounds like this wall of sound. There's so much going on. It just overwhelms the palate. So part of what we were trying to do was to draw the ear to specific lines, to specific instruments, to begin training ears to be able to digest symphonic music. So
that's cool. I mean, because it's, yeah, I was just going to say it's cool. All right, so you went to the Cuban Overture. Here it comes. Cuban Overture.
You found it.
Mr. Gershwin.
My piano. You found it. It's a little out of
Mr.
tune.
Gershwin.
It's my piano.
Beautiful.
It's a
When
little
I
out of
touched the
tune,
keys-
eh?
No, it's
I heard
beautiful.
something
When I touched the
inside.
keys, I heard
Your
something
piano was
inside.
calling to
Your
me.
piano was
Looks
calling
like you may have
to
found what
me.
you're looking for.
The piano?
Looks like you may
piano
have
is the
found what you're looking
composer's
for.
best friend.
The piano?
The piano is the composer's best
You can
friend.
find all the
From
parts
that
of
wooden
the
box
entire
of wires and
the
mallets,
music
you can
of a
find
whole
all the
city?
parts
Now
of
you're
an
thinking
entire
like a
orchestra.
composer
And the music of a whole city?
Now you're thinking like a composer, kid.
It's just my tune book.
Hey, what's
I
that?
heard a bit of music in my head just now. It's just my tune book. Write down I heard a bit of music in my head just now, and I like to write down maybe ideas before they vanish. Who knows? Want to try? Maybe I'll use it for my new concerto. All right. Watch, listen, and learn, kid.
Sure.
First, let's start with the thunder from the drums. First, let's start with the thunder from the drums. And the birds fly by with the flutes.
Like in Central
And
Park.
the birds, you heard the trumpets at Yankee Stadium.
Like in Central Winds at the top of
You
the
heard
Empire
trumpets
State
at
Building.
The notes soaring
Winds
up
at the
and
top of
down,
the Empire State
round
Building.
and round, like the mile-high chase.
Those
Round
places,
and
those
round, like the
things.
mile-high
New
chase.
York City. It all inspires music.
That's
New
right,
York
kid.
City.
But don't
it
stop
all
there.
inspires
Music does
music.
more than just sound like places and things. It inspires emotion. Just sound like places and things. It inspires emotion. They're all right there, just waiting to be written down.
I have
They're all
ideas I
right
can't
there,
speak
just
in
waiting
words,
to be
but the
written down.
music that pour out of me.
I have music in my head every moment of every day, and it's times like this in my piano lets me imagine an entire orchestra, so I can let that music out. So I can let that music out.
Boy, oh boy, I get what you're saying, Mr. G, but I feel like I have so much to learn. I get what you're
But
saying,
once you
Mr.
find
G,
your key,
but I feel like I
the
have so
sky
much
is
to
the
learn.
limit. But once you find your key,
I think
the
I
sky
may
is
have
the limit.
found it.
Well, looky there. I'd
found
say
it.
you're on your way. Looky there. I'd say you're on your way.
I tell you what. I wish you were doing this in the Lehigh Valley because I'd be involved all the way. This is fabulous what you're doing for kids. Yeah.
That particular piece, I think the kids just completely killed it. I mean, they really nailed that piece, and they had worked. This was done toward the end of the night. We'd been recording all afternoon. They were getting tired. They took a dinner break, and they came back, but they were relaxed now, and they were really on the top of their game. They were free, and we went back. We had recorded Cuban Overture earlier in the day, but we went back because they were just on this roll, and we started going back to some of these earlier pieces, and they played through Cuban Overture, and it was that, and it was just absolutely magnificent. So
I loved it. I mean, it was a fantastic sound. It really was. When I first heard it, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I Love Lucy? And I'm serious. That was the first thing that came into my mind. I'm thinking, Lucy, home. It went through my mind. No, this is 30 years before that. So, but yeah, because that's what went through my mind. But I loved it, and I'm still blown away by the kids doing this. I really am.
yeah.
So, now we talked about this young lady on here. Ariana, is that how you say her name?
Ariana, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this. We're going to have her talking here in a recording, but I know you want to lead in on this a little bit, Paul.
You bet. It was important to us to highlight, one of the kids in the orchestra and see if they would talk about their experience with the recording. And Ariana is the concert master. She actually played a beautiful solo on the Humoresque by Dvorak. We put that in the show because it was a piece that Will can probably speak to this better than I can, that inspired George when he was young. But Ariana gave this lovely, she did a little pre-recorded interview or type of, telling us about her experience. And it's just a minute and a half or so, but it's just her talking. But I think it's important to hear that, if you want to share that with your listeners.
Sure. Now let's bring that up right now. Here's Ariana.
Hi, it's Ariana. So as for my experience recording, I remember sitting in a crowded hallway right outside the Studebaker Theater. Everyone was chatty and kind of jittery because we knew that we were about to be the first youth orchestra to record a classical kids live show, which are normally done by professional orchestras. To be honest, I was quite relaxed to start out with because I'd just gotten boba, pretty much my favorite thing ever, so it put me in the best mood. But then Katie came out and told me I should probably warm up because it was about to be my turn to record the Humoresque solo. And suddenly it just hit me like a train that I was about to record a solo for a professional quality recording. And I started scrambling to warm up. I definitely got into this performance zone that I have during the recording of complete focus on the music itself and how I was connecting with the pianist, because everything else felt as if it happened incredibly fast. And the next thing I knew, I was walking away from the stage to rejoin my friends outside the theater, super relieved that I had gotten a decent take. I was honestly shocked when I first heard the finished product because it really does sound professional. And I just listened to it and I thought, like, wow, that's crazy. Like, we sound so good. I would never have guessed if you had played this for me. I would never have guessed that it was a youth orchestra, let alone CYSO. I mean, not that we're bad. Like, I know we're a very good orchestra, but it's just like incredible that we sound that good, since we're a youth orchestra. And it was so cool to hear our playing incorporated into the storyline with the voice actors and sound effects added after the fact, because even though we'd heard a description of what the CKL recording might sound like when finished, it's hard to envision that final product when you've just recorded like the one individual piece. And it's also crazy because I know that if I'd heard this recording when I was a kid, I would have been fascinated and wanted to learn more about classical music in general because the recording is just so entertaining. So it's really incredible to think about the potential positive impact CYSO could have just had on so many young kids and their journeys with music with this recording, whether it be starting them on that journey or just increasing their love for music. And I'm so grateful that I could be a part of this. Thank you.
Now, if you want to hear Ariana now play that piece she was just talking about, the Humoresque, I think it's next on the list there.
Yep, there it is. Okay, here we go. Here's Ariana and doing her thing.
You have a world-class imagination. You heard the music at Yankee Stadium. Now you just need to find the key that unlocks the music in your head, that lets you create it. See you later, Mac. Come on, let's get out of here.
Shoot, I can't create any music on my own. It just ain't good enough.
Not good enough?
I ain't got a lick of talent.
Says who? Listen, I went to school with a kid named Max Rosen. Ever heard of him?
Uh-uh.
Well, he was quite something at the time. A violin prodigy. Very talented. Anyway, we must have been about 10 years old, and I was outside during recess while Max was inside the school playing the Humoresque by Dvorak. I stood outside an open window, listening, enthralled. I knew then I wanted to be a musician. Maxie opened up the world of music to me. I respected him. But when I told him I wanted to be a musician too, he laughed. He said, "You haven't any talent at all."
Sounds like my daddy.
If I didn't have something to prove to him back then, maybe I wouldn't have punched him.
You punched him?
Right in the kisser. I really did. Now, I'm not proud of that, but I wasn't going to let Maxie Rosen tell me what I could or couldn't do. What if I had listened to Max when he said I didn't have any talent? Might be I'd be selling papers on this corner. So don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't be. You'll never know what you love if you never give anything a chance.
Think so?
I know so. In the end, studying the piano made a good boy out of a bad one. It took the piano to tone me down, made me more serious. I was a changed person. You want to be selling papers for the rest of your life? Or do you want to do something that you love?
I have a feeling you would have found music no matter what. Me? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, so this is a scene where George is helping Kid understand his, the potential that he might have.
That was a good speech to him too, because
Yeah.
more people need to hear that. Excel. I mean, yeah, that was a good, very good speech by George Gershwin to the kid. So I'm sitting here, I'm staring at the list of what's coming next, and next on the list is this second Rhapsody. And I mean, I'm stunned by Ariana's, playing this, your whole orchestra doing everything they've done, and now you've told me about the second Rhapsody that I've never heard.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've never heard the second Rhapsody, and I am a fan, of course, as we've talked about, of the first Rhapsody. And now we're going to find out about this. So you want to talk about this before we dive into it?
Sure. George Gershwin wrote this piece actually for film music. It was supposed to be an extended sequence, and he originally titled the piece Rhapsody in Rivets. And the idea was that it was supposed to be for this long montage of skyscrapers. So obviously when Paul and I were talking about what would be the perfect piece to pair with the Empire State Building, this was tailor-made for it. It ended up being cut. It's one of those classic art versus commerce stories. Gershwin wrote lots of things for the movies that ended up being cut for commercial reasons, and this is one. I don't know why this piece doesn't enjoy a better reputation, why it isn't performed more frequently, because it is first rate. It's exciting. It's extremely well composed. Bernstein says that the slow theme, the romantic theme, which we'll hear, is the best of Gershwin's romantic themes. And frankly, I agree. When I'm on stage and those French horns come in, it gives me chills every time. I love it.
Well, let's listen to this, and maybe you can figure out why it doesn't have the play. Well, I don't know. Who knows why? Why does some of the songs make it to the #1 spot on Billboard's list now, and others you think they should be there? And just before I hit the button here on this, consider this. And I don't know if you probably do know, but you know who Bob Sager is, don't you?
Yes.
Bob Sager and the Silver Bullet Band. Very popular songs the man wrote. Okay, never a #1. Like, why? I mean, old time rock and roll. People sit around singing that today. That song's 30 years old, 40 years old, but it never was #1. On the other hand,
it happens.
It's weird. And then you turn around with the Dark Side of the Moon that hits 1,000 weeks on the Billboard charts for top album. So or not top album, but just was on the Hot 100. Yeah, it's hard to say. But okay, so let's listen here to Second Rhapsody by George Gershwin.
Listen, kid, sometimes you have to go looking for music. Sometimes you have to change your perspective. Say, have you ever seen the view from the top of the Empire State Building?
No way. I can barely look out the apartment window without feeling queasy.
Well, let's just see if we can't change your tune. Taxi!
Oh no, not again!
Empire State Building. And step on it!
Towering above the rest of Manhattan, the Empire State Building, the eighth wonder of the world, it stood 1,250 feet tall!
Come on, kid. We're going to the top.
Hold the elevator!
Thank you, my good fellow. 102nd floor, please.
I felt like I'm on top of the world!
They said it couldn't be done. They said buildings had to stay low to the ground.
Boy, were they wrong!
American ingenuity, a lot of hard work. An architect does with stone and steel what I do with an entire orchestra. The sounds of the machine age, kid. Staccato, not legato.
I hear hammering and riveting. Giant cranes are lifting tiny men high into the air.
They said a building couldn't scrape the skies, and they say jazz can't reach the heights of Beethoven. Ah! No folk operas? Or jazz concertos?
Don't listen to them, Mr. G. I believe in you. Remember, you have a magic key.
That's right, kid. I do. And I know just how to use it. We'll show them all wrong. I'll build a skyscraper of American music.
Okay, I think I know why. With this song here, Second Rhapsody, you're already in New York City, okay, and you're experiencing what is in New York City. This is just my amateur take, okay? That's all it is. You're already there in New York City. You're going into the Empire State Building. You're already part of the magic of New York. With Rhapsody in Blue, when you get that oboe starting up, that's the sun coming up over the city, and you're going in. Longer trip, okay? Because when it first comes up and you got that, you got that music coming up, you got the oboe bringing you in. All of a sudden, you hear now you hear the traffic, people going back and forth, and Rhapsody in Blue, you hear the story of going into New York City. You see the size of the buildings, okay? You see the traffic, you feel the people all the way through. In Second Rhapsody, you don't feel any of that. You feel the Empire State Building. That's the only thing. And I have a feeling, from my completely uneducated viewpoint, that's why Second Rhapsody didn't grab the way Rhapsody in Blue did. Because Rhapsody in Blue took you all the way around New York. And I believe the final segment of Rhapsody in Blue, you're at the Empire State Building, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. You would know better.
Well, I'm not sure that Rhapsody in Blue has that specific a program, but I know what you mean, and I would say that Rhapsody in Blue is a whoop from the 20s. It's more Tin Pan Alley than Tchaikovsky, whereas Second Rhapsody uses a more sophisticated compositional palette, and so it doesn't have that sort of maybe popular crossover appeal. Even though as an artwork, perhaps it hangs together better, but I love Rhapsody in Blue. It's always number one in my book.
I have tried to play that blasted song.
It's hard, dude.
I got this. I had the sheet music when I lived at home with my parents, and all I had was, I don't know, maybe 5 sheets, and it had the notes right in the freaking C with a big dot. It's like, okay, we can't screw this up. I did. I cannot get that song.
Yeah.
It's the one song. I mean, prior to that, Star Trek: The Motion Picture was a tough one to play. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. That one.
Gotcha.
That was hard, and because it's a weird timing. Everyone says no, it's a march. It's not a march. It's a 6/8. Okay. If you want to waltz to it, go ahead. You'll fall over. But and then you can Rhapsody in Blue, and you're trying to do this all over the keyboard. And I the person I would like to see play it, and I hope Will, you can relate to this. And he can't because he's not with us anymore. Chico Marx.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and Chico Marx, did you know that as boys, the Marx brothers and Gershwin knew each other when they were young?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Chico actually worked in the same place when they were piano pluggers.
Oh my God!
So not piano pluggers, but they were rehearsal pianists at the same place. So yeah, they were of that same world, and Chico definitely, as a novelty pianist, would have been able to draw out some of that
he would have been
tin
fabulous
can stuff.
Yeah, it's fabulous. When I play, okay, I like I said, I play like Jerry Lee, and my hands go all over the board like a little bit like Chico sometimes. Okay, and it aggravates the arthritis. So, but I love watching Chico. Okay?
Yeah.
And I admit I've tried doing some of the stuff that he does.
It's harder than it looks,
yes,
isn't it?
It is, and you gotta have really damn good aim when you're trying to fire.
You do.
But did you see the one where he plays the Three Stooges theme with an orange?
I have not.
He plays the three. He's there playing, and Harpo pulls an orange out. Chico grabs the orange. He starts going up and down playing "Listen to the Mockingbird."
Oh yes. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that now.
You got to be kidding me! How are you doing that? And it's like, and then seeing Chico doing Rhapsody in Blue. Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, I would sit there and be mesmerized for the whole 60, watching this man's fingers fly over the board.
Yeah, but Chico's technique. He had a really, really sophisticated right hand. But if you watch his left hand, he's keeping it pretty simple with sort of oompa stuff.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are very sophisticated and difficult, virtuosic in Rhapsody in Blue. And I'm not sure that Chico's left hand would have been. Fred Astaire, by the way, was an excellent pianist as well. And Frederick Austerlitz and George Joshua Gershwitz, George Gershwin and Fred Astaire, met when they were 16 years old at Remix Music Store before either of them was famous, and they became friends.
I'll be darned.
And George was much taken with Fred Astaire's piano playing, but even Fred couldn't play Rhapsody in Blue. It's one of those pieces that eludes a lot of talented musicians.
We had a concert here at one church. Guy came in and played Rhapsody in Blue, and I bought tickets to go see it. I was all set to go, and I forget what happened. I think I got sick or something like that, but I couldn't make it. And all I wanted to do was drop a bowling ball on my head because I was sick. I wanted to see this so bad. I've never seen a piece performed live. Okay. And, it's just one of these things that's eluded me over the years, and it's on my bucket list. And I got to get that done soon because we're, they get me younger. But it's just such a fabulous piece. Wow. And this, I'll tell you what, guys, I mean, we've gone through all of our videos. We've talked about some fantastic things. We've even had the internet trip on us. And this has been a fabulous interview. It has. I mean, you guys are fantastic what you're doing. I definitely would love to see you guys live in the flesh. You're the Children's Youth Symphony Orchestra. I would love to see them. And I know we had talked about this. I'm not sure if I talked to you, Paul, or somebody else, but we were talking about expanding a little bit more about this, about what you guys are doing, because you have some other projects that you've done some work on. And I'm definitely open to talking about some other things, because this, music, what we cover on Rock in the Valley, we cover like a lot of the regular scene here, your acoustic stuff, your jazz, blues, rock and roll, and some of hip hop. And this is a completely new direction, and we need it. I mean, like it's that cool. And giving the youth that there is so huge. My one daughter played flute, and she said, I'm done. But none of my other kids took it up. It was just kind of funny. I always wanted them to, and I've offered to teach them piano. But do you have something we can close on? I mean, we already did that first one. We can redo it. I think we should properly.
There's an opening bite, that thing at the very top of the list there. It's just it might be a nice thing to go out on. It's the very top of the CD. It's the very opening of the CD. There's no words over it. It's just instrumental, and it might be nice to go out on it, or roll credits with that, or whatever you're thinking.
Okay, well, let's just hit this and we'll go forward with this. And before I hit it, I'll say again to you guys, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Will. This has been a thoroughly enjoyable interview. And I'm looking forward to talking with you guys more about your other projects. And it's just great, and Paul, not Paul, Will, I'm jealous. You can play this song, okay? And this is it. I ain't ever talking to you again. So,
Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
Truly, thank you.
Yeah, great. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close out here on just a musical piece. But I'm Steve Jones here, along with Paul and Will from the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra, and with one of the most fascinating interviews I think we've ever done on one of the greatest pieces of music ever to come out of the 20th century, Rhapsody in Blue. So for now, we're going to say goodnight. And this has been Rock in the Valley Presents. Thank you very much.
Bye.